Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our newest miniseries, POTUS in the Movies, Presidential Biopics, consisting of a selection of biographies of U.S. presidents in honor of President's Week. This week's film is Lincoln, 2012, directed by Steven Spielberg with Daniel Day-Lewis and Sally Field. John Williams composed and conducted all of the music except one piece, Battle Cry of Freedom, which was written by George Frederick Root, 1820-95, during the Civil War. Williams recorded his music with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra and chorus. The screenplay is credited to Tony Kushner and was adopted from Doris Kearns Goodwin's 2005 biography, Team of Rivals, The Political Genius of Abraham Lincoln. In 1999, Ms. Goodwin told Spielberg that she was writing a biography of Lincoln, whereupon he immediately asked to buy the film rights to her book. John Logan had written an earlier draft of the film's screenplay, which focused on Lincoln's relationship with Frederick Douglass, but Spielberg wasn't happy with it and brought Kushner in to polish it up and change the focus to the last 4 months of Lincoln's life during his push to pass the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The film was acclaimed by critics, particularly for Day-Lewis's portrayal of Lincoln and for Spielberg's directing. It was nominated for 12 Oscars, including Best Actor, Best Picture, and Best Director, and won Best Actor and Best Production Design. Rotten Tomatoes said on its website that Daniel Day-Lewis delivers in this witty, dignified portrait that immerses the audience in his world. Roger Ebert gave the film 4 of 4 stars and said that Day-Lewis performed the role with calm self-confidence, patience, and willingness to play politics in a realistic way. A.O. Scott of the New York Times concluded that the movie was a rough and noble democratic masterpiece. The film performed well financially, earning over $275 million on an investment of $65 million. Lincoln was filmed on location in Washington, D.C., and Richmond, Fredericksburg, and Petersburg, Virginia. The Virginia State Capitol in Richmond was used for interior and exterior images representing the U.S. Capitol, and also for some scenes of the exterior of the White House. The interior of the Virginia House of Delegates was remodeled to stand in to the U.S. House of Representatives. Scenes representing Grove's Theater were shot in Richmond at the Virginia Repertory Theater's November Theater. Plot summary. Lincoln is set in 1865 as the Civil War is coming to an end during the last 4 months of Lincoln's life. The president is struggling with the continuing carnage of the war and is also fighting with his cabinet officials over his decision to emancipate the slaves. He is deeply aware that the 13th Amendment, which will end slavery, is not a slam dunk, and that he must push it through Congress before the war ends and the southern states can rejoin the Union with the power to block its passage. Meanwhile, Lincoln must deal with his wife regarding many issues over which they famously argue, notably over their son Robert's wish to enlist in the Union Army. Mary is adamant that their son should not serve in the war. Lincoln is so frustrated with her that he even threatens to commit her to an insane asylum. Fun facts about the film. Lincoln's executive office was recreated with great attention to authenticity, even using the same wallpaper and books that Lincoln had in his original space. The ticking of the watch that we hear in the film is Lincoln's personal pocket watch, which he carried on the night of his assassination. It is now in the Kentucky Historical Society in Frankfort, Kentucky. Daniel Day-Lewis originally turned down the role of Lincoln because he did not think he was good enough to play the part of such an iconic character. It was Leonardo DiCaprio who convinced him to take the role. Lobbyist William N. Bilbo's character was created from scratch because there are no photographs of him available anywhere. The character was eventually pulled together from various historical sources. Asa Luke Two Crow, who played Lieutenant Colonel Ely Parker, was a member of the film's rigging crew. He resembled the Senate sachem so closely that the film's casting department approached him to play the role. He would act the role in military dress, then strip his costume and dive into his rigging gear and go back to work. Sally Field had to beg Spielberg for an opportunity to audition for the role of Mrs. Lincoln because he thought she was too old for the part. Daniel Day-Lewis flew from his home in Ireland to Los Angeles to test with her. Spielberg addressed his cast members by their characters' names while filming, calling Day-Lewis Mr. President and Field Mrs. Lincoln. This movie actually contributed to the final ratification of the 13th Amendment. The state of Mississippi had never filed the paperwork with the U.S. Office of the Federal Register when it finally agreed to ratify the amendment in 1995. Mississippi officials finally filed the papers on January 30th, 2013, thus completing the ratification process. James Spader, who plays Lincoln's secretary, is seen hand-carving a wooden duck. Spader's personal research showed that wood carving was a prominent hobby in Civil War-era America. According to Doris Carnes Goodwin, the Ethan Alley story that Lincoln tells, including its vulgar punchline, is an actual story that Lincoln loved to tell. Spielberg has said that in the final scene where congressmen in the House of Representatives are being called to vote on the 13th Amendment, some of the names of those who voted no were changed in order to spare their descendants embarrassment over their ancestors' negative votes. Lincoln and his wife have one of their infamous fights over their son Robert's wish to enlist in the Union Army. It was actually Robert Lincoln who later committed his mother to a mental institution. In the scene where Robert Lincoln talks with his father, his little brother Tad sits on the edge of the bed looking at glass photographic plates by the light of a candle. One of them is a picture of a slave named Gordon, which was taken by McPherson and Oliver of New Orleans and circulated widely during the push to ratify the 13th Amendment. Fernando Wood calls Lincoln King Abrahamus Africanus I. He's referring to an 1864 pamphlet created by a group of pro-Confederate Democrats known as the Copperheads, to which he belonged, illustrated with a cartoon of Lincoln wearing a crown. In the film, Lincoln sometimes refers to his wife as Molly, which was an endearment he actually used. It was her nickname as a child. The baton used by the conductor of Faust, the opera attended by the Lincolns, belonged to Tony Kushner's father, who was a clarinetist and conductor of the Lake Charles, Louisiana Symphony. Kushner requested that the baton be used in memory of his father, who had passed away in March 2012. The dismembered leg, seen in a glass box in the first half of the movie, bears a plaque that identifies it as a limb lost by Major General Daniel Sickles, who lost it when he was hit by a cannonball at Gettysburg on July 2nd, 1863. He donated it to the Army Medical Museum. Things to look for: the authentic decor of Lincoln's office, the ticking sound of Lincoln's own pocket watch, Bilbo's hand-carved wooden duck, the Ethan Allen story, the final scene of the vote counting in Congress, in which they disguise the names of the no voters, the Lincolns' notorious domestic arguments, the use of Virginia State Capitol for the U.S. Capitol, little Tad Lincoln sitting on his father's bed, perusing his glass plates by candlelight, Fernando Wood's reference to King Abrahamus Africanus I, Lincoln calling his wife Molly, William Kushner's baton used by the conductor of Faust, Major General Daniel Sickles' severed leg in its glass case. Listen for John Williams' score. Now it's time to view Lincoln. Sit back, settle down. Please remember, it may take a few minutes for the film to roll. Enjoy.